On-
Hello, everybody. I'm excited to have this webinar today. We're going to take a couple of minutes and make sure everybody gets in that's wanting to come in. So we're going to start it in just a minute or two. Good afternoon. If you just joined us in the last few seconds, we're getting ready to start our webinar on propane and mid-range trucks. We're going to hang on a little bit and make sure everybody that wants to get in is in, and then we'll get started very quickly. Bear with us. Welcome to our webinar today on propane and mid-range trucks. We're going to start in just a couple of seconds, but thanks for joining us, and hopefully we're getting a good group of folks here. All right, let's get started. I always get frustrated when I'm told I've got a webinar and there's all this pomp and circumstance for 10 minutes and we don't get really to the meat of it. So we're gonna get there very quickly. If you can go to the next slide. So we are recording this webinar today. So if you've want to see it again, or if you registered and couldn't attend with us, or you want to share it with a colleague, it'll be recorded, and that's something that will be available to anyone, whether they registered or not. We'll be walking through a slide deck with some presentations from some fantastic fleets that are using propane in their operations, and each one of them will be the key highlight of this webinar. They'll be spending most of the hour we're together talking about their fleet, talking about their operation, and how they're taking advantage of this fuel and the technology on the trucks. And there's also a Q&A at the end. So we'll have 10 or 15 minutes at the end of this hour for us to take some questions. So there's a section on your screen that allows you to input a question to our team, and we will select a few of those for as much time as we have at the end. So I'm real excited to get going with this. So next slide. So this is hosted by NACFE, the North American Council for Freight Efficiency, and I'm Mike Roeth, the executive director. If you don't know about us, hopefully you do, but if you don't, we're an unbiased group that's working to double freight efficiency. We get asked all the time, what does that mean? But and basically we work to move more freight with less fuel. And so in our diesel world, that's miles per gallon or ton miles per gallon, and we look to double that back to kind of when we started around 2010. So I think we're making good progress on that as an industry. I know we are with really good fuel economy tractors and box trucks that are out there versus where we were 10 or so years ago. McAfee.org and runonless.com are our two websites. A lot of information there we think that can help you in your work if you are a follower of us and a fan, you know what's there. If not, take a look and hopefully some of that will help you. Next. So I'm really happy to moderate today's webinar. It'll be a combination of mostly from fleets, as I mentioned, but we'll also have a couple of other experts, Jeff Seger and Joel from PERC, share some comments throughout this. And so as we get started here, I just want to turn it over, I believe, to Jeff next for a few introductory comments. This is that agenda that I just mentioned, where we'll hear from Jeff first, a little bit about an overview of propane, very short, and then get to Erik and Lisa in real world applications, and then Joel to close us out before some Q&A.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody, or if you're in Pacific or Mountain Time, I guess still morning. Anyway, good day to you. As Mike mentioned, I'm just going to give a quick overview of propane. Maybe go to the next slide, please. There's really two key features I'd like to share with you today. One is low price or low cost of fuel, which translates to a low TCO. And then also, propane is really superior in terms of emissions. And I'll say a little bit more about that in the presentation. I do have a slide which, prior to turning it over to the fleets, will talk about the different types of applications that are quite well suited for propane. Let's go to the next slide, please. Okay, so this slide, it's quite busy, but it's got a lot of useful information on it. And it's basically making a point that the cost of propane or the price of propane is really low. If you look on the left-hand side and look at the map of the United States, you can see prices throughout the states, different regions. I think the lowest price there is $1.78 per gallon. Highest price is $1.91. So very low price for this fuel. Now, whenever you're comparing fuel prices amongst different types of fuels, it's always important to put it on somewhat of a level playing field because the energy content is different between these different fuels. So that's where the right-hand side is helpful in that bottom table there. If you notice that column on the right-hand side, dollars per DGE, that stands for dollars per diesel gallon equivalent, that's trying to normalize everything in terms of a common unit and in terms of the energy content of diesel. So you can see there gasoline's at 447, diesel's at 501, E85, E100 is at 512, and then propane is at 289 per diesel gallon equivalent. So that's about a $2 difference between, or more than $2 between diesel and propane. And that can translate to real savings. We don't have a slide on this, but I was at ACT Expo this spring, and a paratransit fleet in Florida has been using propane for some time, and they indicated they've saved over $17 million over a 10-year period. So this $2-ish difference between propane and diesel really adds up and can save a fuel a lot of money. The other comment I'll make, it's in the title here, but it's also stability. I've been checking these prices for some time, and there's very little volatility. You know, these prices are about the same as what they were before the Iran war. These prices were captured on June 22nd, so they reflect the situation with the war we're in right now. And as you know, diesel and gasoline have fluctuated, 50% more, and you just don't have that with propane. So it gives you nice stability from a budget planning standpoint. Let's go to the next slide and talk about emissions. I use the word efficiency here, and you know, NACFE, the E in NACFE stands for efficiency, and Mike talked about fuel economy, and yes, in the industry, we've made a lot of progress towards improving the mile per gallon of vehicles. I think it's also worth thinking about the emissions side of it, and to a certain extent, I think you could say propane is very emissions efficient, or said another way, it's an ultra-low NOx solution. Today, there are engines, or all the engines, to the best of my knowledge, are certified at 0.02 grams per brake horsepower hour. To put that in perspective, the upcoming EPA standard is going to be 0.035. So the propane engines are already well below that 0.035 threshold. I think the propane industry can also kind of take the high ground in that, there are going to be some engines that will be, their introduction will be delayed, some diesel engines, and the manufacturer will incur NCPs, non-conformance penalties, and, will not be compliant with this 0.035. And again, propane will be there. So it is really a good solution. On my last slide, I talk about, kind of the sweet spot for propane. And I think if you're running in the city where congestion and pollution and things like that are of concern, this is a great solution. Propane is also virtually 0 PM, particulate matter. And then the carbon intensity is a little bit less than diesel and gasoline. And it also comes in renewable propane. So that's also an option. Next slide has to deal with simplification. And I don't have an SCR system here, but most of us are in the industry and we know, the SCR systems have been very good. But they're also pretty darn complex, and it's only going to get more complex once we see EPA 27. You got a couple of SCR cans, you've got a diesel particulate filter, you've got a diesel oxidation catalyst, you've got urea tank, you've got urea filters, all that kind of stuff. And for these propane vehicles, it's just a couple of three-way catalysts. Very simple device. If you think about some of the sensor problems we've had on SCR, like NOx sensor failures and things like that, you don't have that on this three-way catalyst. So it can be done quite simply, which I think, leads to more uptime and lower maintenance costs. Last slide, then we'll turn it over to the fleets. And here is just some illustrations. I probably should have mentioned, but this right now is mainly in medium duty applications. So it's not for heavy duty. But nonetheless, we still burn a lot of fuel in medium duty applications. And you can see here the various types of trucks from walk-in vans to tow trucks to box trucks, etc. The sweet spot for propane is these types of applications, return to base. You probably need to run about 15 to 20,000 miles a year on each vehicle to pay for, overcome the upfront cost. But if you can do that, propane can be a good solution for you. Okay, so with that, Mike, I think we'll turn it over to the fleets and I'll let you continue
Yeah,
facilitating.
thank you. Thanks, Jeff. So now we're going to move to three fleets, and then finally we'll have Joel from PERC. But let's just kick it right off. We want to hear from you guys. So first is Erik McCann. Erik leads up a lot of the fleet operations at Bimbo Bakeries. So I'll turn it over to you, Erik.
Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. As they said, I'm Erik McCann. I'm the Senior Director of Fleet Operations for Bimbo Bakeries U.S. Fleet. And just going to kind of run you through a few quick slides on, where we're at, what we're doing, and where we see the advantages. So if you want to jump to the next slide. That's my introduction. So let's just grab the next one. We'll skip a couple. All right, so for those of you that don't know Bimbo Bakeries, down below is just a few of our brands that a lot of people know. We are one of the largest baking companies in the world. I like to tell people if you open up your cupboards or your pantry, we're probably there in one fashion or another. Whether it has our name right out front or it's stuffed in the back. So a little bit about our fleet. We're running about 5,600 route trucks, 304 tractors, 39 yard trucks, and 2,700 trailers. And that's really just our fleet, our company-owned fleet. We are a mixed fleet. We have 3PLs and all that good jazz that jumps in there. But for today, we're just going to stick with our fleet. So right now, as far as the propane trucks go, we're running 623 that are active. We have 126 that are in the build process. That build process actually kicks off in about 2 weeks. Electric route trucks, we're running 102. And we have 30 in the build process. I'm going to touch on those 30 because they're kind of unique. It's something that we're trying this year. And then we're running we're running 47 CNG route trucks. Now I did miss, and I apologize for the miss, but we are running 3 EV yard tractors, and our 4th one gets delivered next Tuesday. I had to think about it for a quick second, but yeah, it'll actually be delivered next Tuesday. So with that, do you want to jump to the next slide? All right, so one of the questions for this panel was, hey, can you kind of tell us where you're going in the future? So I'm glad to share because I think it's something that's coming to all of us in one fashion or another. There's a lot of shaking and moving in a lot of organizations, a lot of companies today. So the agility of vehicles is very important, being able to move things around. And that's something that you'll see in my next slide where I think it's an important factor for propane. But right now, we've been working for the past couple of years on this fill station that you see here on the left. That is a self-contained, you see the Generac generator there, fueling site. So really, if you kind of nix out all the safety stuff you have to add, you could really have this thing delivered on a flatbed, have it filled up, and you're filling trucks in probably half hour to an hour. The nice thing about this is we are growing and it's all kinds of movement in our organization. So parking is at a premium. So where you put this today might not be where it needs to be tomorrow. With this setup, we can simply order a crane and have them move it 5 feet over and give us, a little more room. Or if we move 5 miles down the road, again, just hire a crane, put it on a flatbed and move it, farther down the road. We piloted this in 2025 and we're rolling more out in 2026. So that's a big one for us right now. Again, just being agile. The next one is our expansion of renewable propane. As you heard earlier, renewable is out there, it's available. We're sucking up as much as we possibly can. California was fully rolled out in 2025. and are rolling out 8 facilities across the United States in 2026. Now, why 8? That's been a question in the past. The reason that we're doing 8 is one thing that I'm very adamant about is we have to understand true well to wheel. That's one. So we just don't want to take our laundry off the floor and put it in the closet, if you will. Want to make sure that we're doing the best for the community that we're serving. So we really need to get it there. And the other thing is we have to set up railheads for this stuff. So there's a little bit of stuff that's going on in the background, but based on where we're located, we think it's that there's something in renewable propane, and it'll just help other companies in the future if we can get these railheads set up. The next one is the EV repower pilot. So as everybody knows, EVs are extremely expensive. We are very lucky. You saw our route truck count. We have a lot of trucks that are in that 30, 50 mile range, inner city runs, those EVs just eat it up. However, when you have a very low mileage truck and a very high expense for the cost of the truck, the ROI is just, it's really tough. So what we've done this year is we've kind of brought back an old friend, right? Back in the day, if you've been in the fleet world for a long time, there used to be repowers, right? We'd pull bodies off and drive new chassis under them. So the team got together and we decided we're going to give 30 of these a try. And what we did is we selected trucks from like California, Arizona, Florida, and we'll take those trucks, those chassis, the wiring harnesses, the engines, rear end, suspensions, they're tired. It's time to go. They've hit their 14-year life, but those bodies are beautiful. So can we take those bodies off, put them on, and get another 14-year life out of the body? It's to be seen. But the real goal here is we're trying to honestly get away from grants. Grants are just very restrictive. Once you go into a grant, you're locked into staying at a facility or staying in a state for 3 to 5 years. With the way we're moving and shaking right now, I don't know that we can do that. And the other one, which probably gets some chuckles out of the group that's here, but mixed fleet depots. We piloted it in Anaheim, California. And what this is a depot that some of the trucks met the EVs, kind of tool, and the others needed LP. They just went too far. One thing about our group is they like to have EVs and if you're going to do EV, we're going to do all EV. If you're going to do propane, you're going to do all propane. And if you're going to do gas, you're going to do all gas. So it was really just breaking the mold and showing that we could use the mixed fleet. And that, of course, as everybody knows, it worked just fine. So now we're really reevaluating and understanding where propane works and where EV works and mixing it in the same depot. So next slide. So the advantages. I was asked to kind of talk about the advantages. Now I understand this slide shows some pictures of our EVs. I was trying to get a little bit of everything on there, but number one advantage for me right now is flexibility. One, those mobile stations are self-contained stations. Since we've started it, it's not been all rainbows and unicorns, right? I mean, we've had our trials and tribulations with them. But here's the beautiful thing, in a pinch, we can fill up at a Loves or Flying J. They don't like to do it, but they'll do it for a little bit. Depending on your vendor, if you have a station go down, you can get wet filled in the evenings. They can make sure you have fuel. So it's really like a safety blanket for the sales team, making sure that we're getting the product out. You all get your buns, hot dog buns and hamburger buns for your Saturday cookouts. So the next one is, and then I want to touch on the station again. Just being able to move that station has been a huge blessing. The other one is maintainability. So for us, our upfitter is Roush. They have one heck of a training program for mechanics. It's a low pressure fuel. It's very safe. It's not like what you see in the movies. So, getting our mechanics in front of in the trainings, once they realize what it is, it's no different than gasoline. And we have zero issues out of our mechanics, and they actually adapt to it very quickly. Emissions benefits. As you heard earlier, so I won't dive into it, the NOx is just near zero. And renewable propane, it just continues to grow. There's more out there. One of the things that, I'm going to call out on this is renewable propanes, it needs to be recognized. It needs to be a recognized fuel. It needs to be recognized as a near zero fuel, right? We got renewable diesel, renewable CNG, renewable. But unfortunately, that little R in front of LPG just really isn't being, from what I know as of today, it's not being really recognized as a net zero fuel. But there's another benefit to this is, the addition of DME. Currently, right now, I will tell you, we are testing renewable propane with a 4% blend of DME. There's some validity there. I think there's
Yeah.
something there that we can really hit the carbon index scoring. And the beauty behind it, and this leads me into my next one, is the cost advantage. We don't go after grants for LP trucks. They're out there. But we've already realized that the ROI is there, that it's not necessary. Fueling stations, if you get with the right partner, you can tack in a 2, 3, 5-year deal, and the stations are free. That station that you just saw in those pictures is just tied into the fuel for 3 to 5 years. So you can have those things dropped in no time on your lot, and you can be converted over. And, it's a very inexpensive upfit to go to propane. Now you go to propane, you got organic, you got renewable, and you got renewable with DME. I truly believe 4% is not causes. We've been running it for about a year, not an engine issue whatsoever. I think it's possible to get to that 8 to 12 mark. But to do that, we need Roush to do a lot of testing and a lot of studies. They're not going to waste their resources if it's not a recognized fuel. So we really need the world to understand that it's there. It's quick. I believe that it's a good intermediate, and there's a lot of untapped potential there.
Yeah, Erik, thank you. This is
Yep.
Mike. I got just a quick follow on, and then we'll move on to the next speaker. I mean, you're a very large fleet with respect to how many trucks you're in, route trucks and tractors and so forth you're operating, and it looks like you're kind of using all three of these solutions to have that flexibility as you talked about. I mean, where do you see it going long term? Will battery? Is your thought that battery route trucks will come quick or slow, or be be used along with propane for decades? And what's sort of your prediction, if you got one?
I would say it's like going to your toolbox, right? You're not going to use a screwdriver to beat in a nail. I think
Yeah.
everything's got its place. The one thing that we really got to think about, getting an EV route truck right now is not a problem. If you want one, I can give you a phone number and they can have one there for you. The problem is getting it charged. It's the infrastructure.
Yeah.
And it's tying yourself down to that facility and that truck to that facility. And like I said earlier, if you got a brownout, blackout, or a breaker blows, or there's something, you can't just run down to Love's and get it charged up. So it's really important to have that agility. I think there's a lot to be said. The trucks have come a long way. We started an EV in 2019. We've come a long way with the technology has been great, and we continue to improve on it. The infrastructure is just lagging for me. It's
Right.
too restrictive.
Well, hey, congratulations on being a leader. It's obvious, and thanks for joining us on this webinar. I mean, I think there's got to be times it feels like you're on that bleeding edge, not leading edge, as we talk about. So,
Yeah.
but congratulations on the hard work. That's fantastic. So, next we're going to move to Office Depot, and another Erik Smith's going to share some of the experiences that Office Depot's had, and particularly with propane. Erik?
Good morning, afternoon, everyone. Next slide. So this is the vehicle that we have, which we consider our low emissions. It's very similar to what Erik had shared as far as a route truck. It's pretty new for us. We've only had these vehicles in circulation for the last year and a half. We operate 31 of them today. We have similar vehicle specs in both a gasoline and an EV version, similar to what Erik talked about as well. This vehicle is really designed for efficiency as it relates to stops. So as you're placing your orders for both e-com and B2B businesses, this vehicle allows us to be really dynamic. It's a dual fuel vehicle, so it operates both gasoline and propane. We chose that specifically to allow us as much flexibility as possible. We don't have the scale and size of some of the larger fleets. We operate, which will be in the next slide that we'll get to in just a minute. We operate just over 500. We have a lot of satellites, so we are really more of a wide versus a dense topography as it relates to our locations. So as customers change and contracts change, we have to be dynamic enough to be able to shift our vehicles around to meet the needs of different activities. So the dual fuel was really our way of making sure that this vehicle could easily be moved to a market that only has one vehicle, and we wouldn't have the infrastructure in place to do the propane. We may not even have a wet hosing option in some of those markets, but gasoline is everywhere. So this gave us really the best of both worlds, allow us as much dynamics as possible in order to move vehicles around within our network. So if you can go to the next slide. Just a quick overview. Like I said before, we operate 31 of these propane-powered vehicles in 7 different locations and 4 different states. Not what you would consider the primary states for propane. Obviously, Texas is a pretty big component of that. But Virginia, Pennsylvania, and Louisiana, you're like, I don't understand why you're there. We weren't driving after grant monies and assistance by the different states. We were really using this vehicle to upgrade our existing fleet. Like Erik had mentioned, we kind of target most of our vehicles as far as a service life around that 9-year mark. And these locations had vehicles that were coming up to that. So we started just to implement, not trying to find money to help implement, but really in markets that we needed new vehicles. And this was the vehicle that we really felt would be kind of define our future. So again, those states aren't probably really popular with propane, and those locations are more of our smaller satellite sites. So we rely on more of the wet hosing solutions with the AmeriGas and Ferrogas Suburbans of the world to come out and fill those vehicles for us. The buildings are so small that the infrastructure requires landlord approval, and we're in a commingled application. So it can be very difficult sometimes to convince the landlord to allow us to put infrastructure in, but it also allows the drivers not to have to worry about anything as well. So from an efficiency perspective, we are still using the wet hosing options in that, and we would probably continue to do that versus kind of building an infrastructure to support it. And you can see that our total fleet is much smaller than what Erik had mentioned before. We're just over 500, but we are in 28 different locations across the U.S. Really, those locations are kind of really targeting our B2B businesses and some of the e-com activities that we have. Next slide. And really, for why we use propane, really we found propane to be no different than what we were using for diesel and gasoline. It operated exactly the same, and some drivers would actually say it operates better, which we know why it does, right? It has a higher octane versus the gasoline and diesel, so you get a little bit more of that oomph when you kind of put your foot into the pedal. It is obviously less expensive. Jeff talked about that earlier, and obviously the emissions was another big component for us. Why we started down the path of the EV as well as propane. But there's not a single solution that works for us, only because probably of our size and our diversity and the number of locations we're trying to cover. Again, our single largest location only has 30 vehicles. Most of the locations average in the mid-teens. So we have to be really dynamic, and we really can't kind of do one solution, because there's some routes that are running 35 miles a day, and there's some that are running 200 miles a day. So we have to really have a pretty wide, diverse component. And for everything that we've had to put those propane units against, we've had no issues, no service problems, no performance issues. Everything has worked exactly what we have. So it's been a really good initial start. Again, it's only 31 vehicles. We are planning to purchase more in the coming years, specifically next year and the years after. But it is not a one-size-fits-all. And I think that's probably one of the biggest things that I would share with the group, is that not everything's going to fit. Everyone has a unique dynamics that's different for themselves. And what all of us are sharing today may not be what's fit for you. But there is components that really fits for everybody. Everyone has to take product from point A to point B. And depending on that product and that product size and weight and how far you got to go, there's solutions here, the propane, that definitely would fit. So,
yeah. So Erik, a couple questions, from me. I mean, I think I understand the dual fuel and why you did it. You want to be able to fuel with gasoline if you, for some reason, you can't get the propane, or you decide, to move it into an area where for a period of time, maybe you don't have the fueling set up and so forth. But what trade-offs are there for that? So I'm assuming that means you've got gasoline tanks and propane tanks on the vehicle. And both can be used at different times, but does that cost more? Does it take up too much space? Do you end up with smaller tanks? What are some of the trade-offs of that dual fuel approach?
Yeah, so someone could look at it from total weight capacity and GVW, but those vehicles are spec'd at a higher GVW class 5. We're not using all of the capacity as relates to, we we do ship a lot of heavy stuff. We got a lot of paper and water and everything that you need for your office. But it really didn't take away enough as it relates to weight capacity for our cargo. As far as an up cost perspective, yeah, I mean, it was a little bit more expensive because you are supporting both elements as right for fuel. But the trade-off of that was a lot more important for us because we couldn't designate only propane. We had to have the ability to be dynamic to move a truck or two, because we are moving vehicles around throughout the year because, again, we have a large client that we have. Fortunately, we lose that to one of our competitors, or we have an increase in a market that we essentially shift units around. And you're like, well, what's one or two trucks? One or two trucks just keeps us from having to buy another truck. And that's difficult as well. So we try to be as dynamic as possible. And that gave us that solution that we didn't have to have a propane, whether it be an on-site tank, which we're not doing, or have a wet hose option in a very small market, which propane pretty much is pretty much everywhere. So we haven't had that issue, but we didn't know what we were walking into. So we wanted to make sure for our initial purchase that we had as much flexibility as possible. So I'm not sure.
And so
how answers your question.
Yeah, no, that was a great answer. I mean, so how do you what's the manufacturing process for you to get these vehicles? Are these tanks and so forth built on the Ford assembly line, or does it go through Roush or somebody else? And
yeah, so it's through Autogas. So essentially, we would buy the chassis. We utilizing Utilimaster. So Utilimaster would put that on, and then obviously we do the third vendor would then apply, Autogas would apply their technology to it, and then we would take delivery of the vehicle. All the time, that window is not much longer than really a normal, just say a normal production time. By the time you place the PO with your manufacturer or the chassis, it delivers to the outfitter, and then the outfitter gets it to the secondary outfitter, which would be for the fueling component. It really doesn't add much time, probably less than 30 days, because it's all coordinated, right? I mean, the timetable, when you actually place an order, you're months out, not days out. So there's a long window that everybody knows where you are as far as the process and when they should be accepting it. And we don't try to cut it so close that we have a truck that we're retiring it because it's met its service life, and then we're expecting this to be there the very next day. We have a pretty large overlap because we want to make sure that everything is correct and the transition is good, that we have the wet fueling options available to us. So we always usually, when we do a transition, we have both vehicles up for quite a while, and then we essentially dispose of the vehicle that it's being replaced.
Got it. Very good. Hey, thank you very much. I mean, this is I think the key for me and what you're describing is maintaining flexibility and working on a transition. I think too often we think about, okay, well, we've got these kind of trucks and we're doing this fueling and so forth, and in the future we're going there, and we don't think a lot about how do we get from point A to point B, and this dual fuel effort, is one that helps with that transition. So we're going to move next to our third fleet. I'll avoid saying last. We didn't have any particular order, but we're excited to have Lisa from McAbee Trucking joining us. So take it away, Lisa.
Hello, I apologize. I had to change computers because of technical difficulties, so my video is not working. My name's Lisa McAbee. I run McAbee Trucking Incorporated. We've been in business since 1971. Next slide, please. We started as a contractor for the United States Postal Service, and we've been a contractor for 55 years, United States Postal Service. The United States Postal Service started their initiative to go green in 2014. I started educating myself on different types of fuels and vehicles to be able to achieve that goal for the Postal Service and for us as a fleet. I found that going to CNG was a little very, very hard road for me because in the state of South Carolina, there were any grants at the time. So I did succeed in obtaining 2 compressed natural gas tractors used in 2017. But then I started off with PERC. A gentleman from PERC who was a friend of mine approached me about propane autogas. So we demonstrated the first propane autogas truck in 2019. Talking about getting it built. We made a decision at a meeting in Las Vegas in January that we wanted it to be at the Workhorse Truck Show in Indianapolis at the end of March. So they built my truck, Ford, Roush Clean Tech, Mickey Body, and I built my truck in 2 months, had it ready to be delivered for that show. And we demonstrated that propane autogas the next week after the Workhorse truck show. I will later talk about that truck when we come to the safety of propane. In 2020, we purchased 7 more vehicles, propane autogas. In 2021, we received 4 natural gas tractors. In 2023, we purchased 10 more propane autogas trucks. In 2024, we purchased an additional 10 propane autogas trucks. My goal was to have my whole entire fleet box trucks to be propane autogas by the year of 2025, and we achieved that goal. The pluses of having propane autogas is, first of all, the cost of the trucks compared to diesel trucks or CNG trucks is priced comparably very low. I'll say a difference of $40,000 to $70,000, depending if you're looking at CNG tractors or propane or diesel box trucks. I've tried, and also the other thing is about the maintenance. The maintenance on the propane autogas trucks is like the maintenance on your own vehicle. You change oil every 8 to 10,000 miles. You change the spark plugs, and there's part for part compared to a Ford truck that you would be driving. And they also make, regular Ford trucks that people drive out on the roads today. That is propane also. And the other thing about the propane autogas is having to have your own infrastructure to fuel. I started with 1 propane tank and a dispenser at my Blacksburg location. I'm now up to 3 propane tanks and that dispenser. I'm using over 200,000 gallons a year of propane autogas, which is, to me, is making a very big difference in the environment. The goal for me for the propane autogas was to cut costs, maintenance costs, fuel costs, and the thing about it, the maintenance. Because propane autogas versus diesel vehicles, you don't have to worry about the DEF. If you have a DEF system that goes down and needs to be cleaned or whatever, it costs you anywhere from $10,000 to $14,000 just to get that DEF system fixed. Whereas you don't have to worry about DEF anymore with propane autogas. The maintenance is very simple. My maintenance crew does all the oil changes to preventive maintenance on it, and I have a very good relationship with my local D&D Ford and Greer, who does the major repairs, which I have not required many of at all because of the stability of the trucks. The other reason for propane autogas again is the environment. I have grandchildren and great grandchildren, and I see that the footprint that we as industry of trucking or all industries, the carbon footprint that we're leaving behind us was not looking very well. So with a propane autogas, I can leave a little carbon footprint that's a little better for my family and my generations to come. Is to think about the whole picture and not just the small picture of the environment. And the other thing is the cost of the propane versus diesel and the environment change that you have is kind of no-brainer to me. And one other thing that I did when I was going this way with the propane autogas was I asked each autogas person that was going to be providing my fuel, what were they going to be delivering my propane in? Every one of those people said diesel except for one, which was Alliance Autogas. They said we will be delivering your propane in a propane autogas truck, which the distance to me, that's why I went with them. Because why would I want my fuel that I'm trying to make an environmental decision on to be delivered by a non-pro-environmental truck? So that's how I made the decision on who was going to provide my propane autogas. And you were talking about the difference in cost of the fuel, propane, and diesel. You can sit down with all propane autogas people if you're going to have a dedicated person, and you can negotiate your price on the cost of your propane. Not just on the road. You were looking at the cost of it on the road. But you can sit down with your provider, depending on how many gallons you use, and try to negotiate your own price, so that whether you're feeling here or New York, you're going to be feeling the same price if you're within their network.
Yeah.
So,
Lisa,
very good
that
points.
fantastic points, Lisa. I mean, do you keep your trucks their whole life, or do you try to do you sell those as a used asset to somebody else?
I keep my trucks for the whole life, because if I have to replace an engine in my propane autogas truck, it costs me $16,500 to replace that engine. I get a 3-year unlimited mile warranty on that engine. If it was a diesel truck, I'd be paying $40,000 for an engine to be installed. So, and the boxes that I have, they hold up very well. If
Hmm.
I replace a box, I have Mickey Box Company just right up the road from me. Just take it up there, take that box off, and put a new box on it. So I try to keep mine for as long as I can, because if the truck's still running, everything's good. If something happens, I mean, at a certain mileage point of the propane auto gas, if you do have to replace the engine, then why not spend 16,500 to replace it if you still have an almost brand new truck, because you're taking care of it otherwise, as to purchasing a new truck and sell it.
Yeah. Well, hey, Lisa, thank you for your. I mean, this has been a long journey for you. Congratulations on being a leader and bringing propane in, and we all use the postal service, so we're all part of it, I suppose, with you a little bit. But thanks for sharing your story, and stay on. We'll have some questions maybe here in a bit from the audience that you might help us answer. So thank you very much again. So now let's move on to Joel. Joel's with the PERC, the Propane Energy Resource Education and Research, was it Council? Sorry to putz that up, Joel, but you can explain it to us and kind of bring us home from the presentations that we're going to see today, Joel.
Sure. Thanks, Mike. First of all, we've had three great panelists, before me talk about how they're using propane auto gas in their fleets and the successes that they're having. I hope the audience really has taken a chance to listen to their success stories that they are seeing with that, and how they can, one, be able to take their fleet and move it away from diesel and gasoline, to, one, be able to have some better fuel stability in pricing and things like that. I just want to talk today about fueling infrastructure. Erik McCann from Bimbo, he had a great slide of his fueling infrastructure. If we can go to the next slide right there, he had infrastructure similar to what I have pictured here. Fleets have some great options with fueling infrastructure. One, they can either lease the infrastructure with a long-term contract with a propane marketer. Something as simple as that first picture up on your left, which is a standard station, single tank, single dispenser with some crash protection. And then it's scalable as your fleet grows. You can take and add tanks to it, and all the way up to that big 18,000 gallon tank on the right-hand side. The biggest thing where fleets have to look at is when they do this infrastructure is the site prep, and that site prep is just going to be kind of a landing pad, electrical, and some crash protection. Now, Erik's infrastructure that he showed, he had a propane powered generator fueling that, so that made that really mobile. There's also options out there for mobile stations that can be brought on site for fueling. But the biggest thing is when you're starting out with propane auto gas vehicles, I would suggest, one, that you take a look at the option of leasing the infrastructure to get you started, and over time you have the choice to purchase that infrastructure and be able to be, and as you scale your fleet, you can also scale your infrastructure too. So you're going to tie your fueling contract in with that leasing contract with your when you adopt propane auto gas. So that's a good opportunity. So I think Jeff Seger had a great slide up there showing where propane autogas sits today compared to the other fuels that we see in across the country. And propane autogas is a nice stable price throughout the year, and you don't have that price of volatility. The reason being, it's a domestic fuel. It's made here in the United States, and we have an abundance of it. So that helps that fueling infrastructure and pricing stay at a low cost to you as a fleet. And then, let's just go to the next slide. I think Erik McCann from Bimbo also talked about he doesn't apply for grants and things like that because the ROI pays off pretty quick. But there's some funding opportunities out there. There's always federal grants. You always have to, keep an eye on those. You have your state and local grants. You can always work with your clean city coalitions to find those and help apply. But you also have state propane gas associations. Many of those gas associations also offer some incentive for an adoption of propane autogas vehicles. So, and how do you get in contact with those? You can either contact me here at Propane at PERC to help get you connected with your gas association, but you can also Google them by the state. Then also coming up in September, PERC is offering a program called the Autogas Research Program. This is going to be coming up in September 21st. We're going to launch this. It's where you're going to be able to adopt propane autogas vehicles, $7,500 a vehicle for a either dedicated system like the Roush system, which is a monofuel system, or the bi-fuel system like Erik Smith is using with Office Depot. Both of those are going to qualify for those programs, for that program. And so you can go up to 5 vehicles. And then also, that fueling infrastructure I just showed you, the site prep is the cost normally that you have to see as a fleet that you have to pay to get that infrastructure in. We're going to offer $10,000 for that site prep for that fueling infrastructure be put in place. So there's some good opportunities. We also work with a funding partner that will help write grants and things like that. So you can always reach out to me to put you in contact with those fleets too. So Mike, that's all I have to share, and I appreciate the opportunity to be able to talk about that.
Yeah, Joel, thank you. So we've been collecting some questions from the audience, and so I'm going to start now and kind of ask those of the panelists. So I think all of you chime in, or maybe I'll send it to the question to one of you if I think it makes sense. But one talks about the supply chain of these trucks. So where as we talked, I think a little bit earlier with one of you, where the manufacturer builds the chassis goes to a body manufacturer, and it goes to a third party. I think we're talking about Roush and maybe some others in play here. The truck OEMs, whether they're building Class 8 heavy-duty trucks, medium-duty box trucks, or chassis for these type of the old bread vans or these sort of step vans, they're challenged right now with a lot of different engineering programs and so forth. So the question really is around these kind of prep kits for aftermarket ads, and that it seems like there's less of that going on. I think with propane here, we're only talking about a few engines, a few chassis that it's available on. How does everyone feel about it? Is that restrictive in your plans to go to propane, or the industry's plans to go to propane, or is it okay the way it's going, or could it be better? Anyone want to comment on that sort of supply chain of getting the full truck ready to go with propane components?
I would like to comment.
Lisa.
I found the process very simple because I have a lot of the locations nearby because I service South Carolina and North Carolina. When I order the truck, the Ford gets the body and the chassis. They send it to Roush Clean Tech, which is nearby near Salisbury. Then it leaves there and it goes to McAbee. They put the body on it, Then it goes to Belmont. They put the lift gate on it. And it usually only takes me 2 to 3 months to get my trucks I order, and that's up to 7 to 10 trucks a day. Now, in some other areas, there might be some restrictives, but I found it very easy for me and very quite punctual to get the trucks on a timely manner.
Okay, good. Anybody else?
The limitation right now is really for me is, it's the direct inject engines, right? We just haven't figured those out yet. I'm not going to say we're not. I mean, look at how fast technology has expanded in the past couple of years. I think it'll come.
Yeah.
Not sure how yet, but I think once it opens up to direct, we'll have more options. So that's really why you're restricted to the Ford powertrain right now. It's really keeping away from that direct inject.
But
That's
there's
not
no
an issue.
Yeah, there's no real technical reason for it, but expansion of offerings would help, I think, overall, but doesn't sound like it's too big of an issue. Another question we've got is around, end of life.
Mike, can I jump in on that real quick?
Of course, Joel, go ahead.
So, the biggest thing with, there's two differences that we have from Bimbo Bakery and with Office Depot. One is a dedicated fuel system, which is normally ordered through the OEM. And then you have the biofuel system, which can be ordered through the OEM, but it also can be upfitted to current vehicles. And so there's a lot of options there, and there's many different vehicle platforms that can be upfitted. So, like if you're using F-150s in a construction system business, those can be upfitted to biofuel systems, or all the way up to Class 7 trucks. So you have many different platforms that could meet
Got it.
for propane.
Got it. The question around do the propane and the changes to that's done on the engine, does that extend? Does this make the engine life longer, less, about the same? Is there any when you compare it? I guess you got to compare it both to gasoline and to diesel. But what about uptime and durability, long-term life when going to propane compared to gasoline and or diesel? Anybody?
I think Joel can also comment on it, but everything that we've seen, it actually extends because it's an extra lubricant and items like that. So we're still obviously pretty early in the stages, but there's other carriers such as UPS and FedEx, right? They've been on propane for a lot longer than all of us combined. So I think Joel probably would comment and say that there are scientific facts that say that additional lubricant actually extends the life of the vehicle.
Well, propane is very low carbon, and that's what helps. That carbon buildup in the engine is what takes down the engine most of the time. So with propane being much lower than gasoline or diesel, that's what helps extend that life of that engine. So it's a lot cleaner fuel, which helps that engine along the way.
Another question came up around school buses. So, last week I spoke at a conference in Virginia along with actually Tucker from PERC was there, and I found a number of school bus people there talking about propane. Maybe this is for you, Joel, or anybody else. Is there something unique about buses, or is it just kind of fall in the same sort of category of what we've been talking about, vans and trucks and so forth here?
Well, that's a great question. I'm a former transportation director from Washington State. I had 227 buses in my fleet. I put 80 propane buses on the road that, one, help keep my buses with a better uptime, and then two, fueling savings. I saved the district. Those propane buses travel over 800,000 miles in a year, and saving the district over $300,000. So there's a big benefit using propane just in that application. Now I know both Eriks, they travel a lot more miles every year, so I know they're seeing a lot of different savings too.
Could I comment on the environmental part for the school buses?
Sure, Melissa, go ahead.
Well, with all my research and everything I've learned, especially with the Propane Education Research Council and Bluebird people that I've known, propane school buses, they did a study compared to diesel school buses and propane school buses. The students that rode propane school buses versus diesel was making a grade higher, a letter grade higher than some of those students driving on diesel buses. So the quietness, the fumes, the environment of the buses does make a difference on the environment and the stability in a child's life who has to ride a bus also.
Yep. All right. Trying to get through as many of these questions. We've got a few of them. Something I know nothing about is road taxes, or I think that has to do with fuel taxes. How is that handled in the propane world? Does anybody know?
Yeah, we have to report on it. We report our usage, so we get taxed on it that way. They get their money for sure.
Okay.
The one advantage in the state of South Carolina is I do report on it, but the tax on the CNG or propane is less than the tax I pay on diesel. So even my taxes for the fuel tax is less in my area. So that's a big plus also.
Hey, there's a couple of questions. I mean, we kind of talked about renewable LPG, but didn't get into it in too many details. Anybody can tell us like what exactly is it, and how much of a premium directionally is there for renewable propane, and is there kind of a limit on its availability? I mean, is there potentially a lot of it or a little of it? Anybody want to kind of help educate this whole audience about renewable propane?
Joel, you want to take care, or you want me to?
Yeah, Erik, you can talk and I can back you up on that. That's fine.
All right. So there's definitely a premium right now, but it's supply and demand, right? Renewables out there, it is a little bit more expensive. But again, it's not recognized not as a net zero, right? Once it's recognized as a net zero fuel, then the demand's going to go up for, you heard Lisa and everybody here say they're not that expensive you can have a fleet of 5 or you can have a fleet of 2,000. I mean, it doesn't matter. It's a cheap way to, I hate to use the word cheap, but it's a cheap way to go to hit that net zero goal.
Mhm.
But there's just not a lot of people driving it right now that's driving that supply and demand. So where does it come from? It's a feedstock, right? It's not organic. We're not pumping it out of the ground. We're making it. But really, if you look at it at the end of the day, if you hook up the sniffer to the end of the tailpipe, it's still the same molecule going into the engine. So you're still getting the same output, right? What really comes into play for us is what comes in upstream, how it's made, what we're saving upstream, which is where DME comes in, right? If you really want to do some digging, find out, where DME comes from. And if we don't attack that, what it's doing to the environment on its own. So just a couple quick things. No, I can't tell you that it's readily available. At least from I know, Joel will have to back me up on that. He's probably a little bit better at that, but it's not hard to get. But again, it's supply and demand. That's why there's a little bit of a premium right now. We are doing it specifically because we think it's the right thing to do. We think that there's a potential there, and we think it is going to be accepted, and we want to be at the tip of the spear when it does. Then we can just take 100 and, let's say they look at us now, we're at organic propane, right? Tomorrow they say, hey, it's going to be considered a net zero fuel. All I got to do is flip a switch, and I got 163 assets running net zero fuel, and it's an overnight impact. So again, it's not even flipping the switch. We're already doing it. Like you see, we're moving it at 8 states across the country just to see what it looks like. So it's there.
Good. Joel, anything to add?
Yeah, pricing wise, where we see first of all, where we see a lot of the renewable propane is on the Pacific coast, Washington, Oregon, and California, and for pricing wise in those states, many of those states offer LCF credits. So a lot of times they can get renewable almost for the same prices as conventional. And they're, I would say too, if you're looking at renewable, you definitely want to talk to your propane marketer to see if it's available in your area. As the need becomes more will be produced, and there's another manufacturer line that would be our manufacturer is ramping up to be built, and so more renewable can be produced that way.
Yeah. Well, hey, we're gonna have to cut it off there. Mike Roeth, and I was never in the military, but I'm a stickler on time, so start and end on time. But I want to thank everybody for joining us. I want to also particularly thank Jeff, Erik, Lisa, and Joel. you guys having the giving us your time and your experience to share what you've come up with. And so thank you for that. I mean, pretty much what we see on the screen there. If you want to reach out on the very specific topic of propane, please do that with PERC and their Joel's contact information there. And if you want to talk a little broader and how this fuel fits into the multi-fuels and efficiency efforts that are going on in the industry, NACFE would be happy to talk to you. So thanks for joining and appreciate your time and good luck out there.
Thanks.